In this video, we're going to study the first node point of vector, which talks about addition of vector. Now, before we actually start with addition of vectors, let's understand the importance of negative sign in vector. Okay. Now, when I say AB bar, and I think of just a diagram of this, what I see is a segment AB and the direction, where A is the starting point and B is the terminal point. Now, as we all know that vector is made up of two components, magnitude and direction, and the direction is given by unit vector along AB bar. Okay, so with this, I got an idea about a vector. Now what I'm trying to discuss here is what happens if I multiply this with a minus sign. Okay, now as we all know, the vector is made up of magnitude and direction, so minus of magnitude into direction. Symbolically, I would write it as mod of AB bar into unit vector. Now, obviously, I cannot give minus sign to mod of AB bar because magnitude represents length of the vector and length cannot be negative. Okay, so here the negative sign will affect the direction of the vector. So here what I get is mod of AB bar into minus of unit vector. And when I say minus, okay, the direction of vector changes. Okay, so basically what happens is when we multiply a negative sign to a vector, the direction changes. Now when I said the direction changes, initially the direction was from A to B. Obviously now the direction will be from B to A. Okay, so in short, can I say minus of AB bar is BA bar? This is the conclusion. Also, okay, we can introduce the negative sign in a vector. So if I make the terminal point as initial point and initial point as terminal point, what I do is I'll apply negative sign. Okay, so just keep this in your mind before we start with addition of vector. Now to add the vector, okay, to add the vector, addition of vectors, we have three choices. Okay, now different teachers has different way of explaining this. Okay, fine. My focus would be totally on triangle law. Okay, so the first law is triangle law. Okay, the other one is parallelogram law, and the last one is Polygon Law. No doubt you might have seen this, the triangle law is one of the most important law of all. Okay, and the other laws like parallelogram law and the Polygon Law are the extension of it. Okay, but I would give you the idea how to apply the formula at what point of time. Now for the time being, when I say triangle law, think of chain. This has to be your first thought. When I say parallelogram law, okay, here number one, the vectors which are added start with common point. Number two, the resultant, that is the answer, also start from same point. And finally, the third one is the given vectors must form parallelogram with resultant as direct diagonal. please for the time being you by heart this. Okay, later on I'll be explaining what each step means. Okay, so when I say parallelogram law, you should tell me, sir, three steps. Number one, all the vectors which we are adding should start with a common point. Number two, okay, is the resultant vector should also start from the same point. And number three, the given vectors should form a parallelogram with the resultant vector as the diagonal. Okay, and the third law is polygon law. Okay, now polygon law is take a vector and form a chain. Okay, so that is what I mean by polygon law. I repeat, when I use polygon law, what I do, I'll take a vector and I'll form a chain. Okay, so keep these three things in your mind and it would be enough to understand when to use which formula. Okay, so this is where I end my this particular video, which just give you the idea about the addition of vectors. So let me repeat one more time. In this video we have understood four things. Number one, when you multiply a negative sign to a vector, the direction of the vector changes. To add vector, we have three choices. Number one, triangle law. Number two, parallelogram law. And number three, polygon law. Now what is triangle law? Triangle law is to think of a chain. Okay, now what is that? We'll understand later on. Parallelogram law. Okay, in parallelogram law, I should think in three steps. Number one, the vectors which are added should start with a common point. The resultant should also start from the same point. And the third, all of them should make a parallelogram with resultant as diagonal. And finally, we talk of polygon law. In polygon law, okay, what we do it is we take a vector and form a chain.